My grandma knew my dad was stealing my child support for years, while I worked 30 hours a week to afford community college. When I finally asked if she knew, she wouldn't meet my eyes and whispered, "Family's complicated." I did what I thought was best. I walked out without looking back. That was 6 weeks ago. This morning, she sent me a photo of us from the park. No return address. No words. I just found out my dad baby trapped my mom with me. I grew up thinking my mom had left us. That's what he always told me. He told me my mother packed up and left us when I turned 2 years old. I grew up to resent and hate her, mainly because I saw how my father was working super long hours to make ends meet. I hated how my grandma basically had to raise me. When I would ask her about my mother, my grandma painted a picture of a bitter, spiteful, hateful, spoiled, and entitled woman. I felt very justified in my anger and hate for her. That's what my family told me, and I had absolutely no reason to doubt them. A few weeks ago, I found her on social media while at my boyfriend's house. And I was so mad. She was out there living her best life. She is a cook in a Michelin star restaurant. She travels, has a huge apartment, and apparently is married to a gorgeous man. In a fit of rage, I DM'd her cruising her out for abandoning me to live her frivolous life, and that karma would come to her. She obviously saw it. Instead of going off on me, she just asked me to meet her, and that she felt like I had a right to express my anger to her in person, and that she owed me as much. I was starstruck because my father said she never stood for the consequences of her actions. Without telling anyone, I agreed. She invited me to this amazing restaurant. She paid an Uber for me and everything. It was very awkward at the beginning. I kept berating her. I was so angry. I cried a little. She just sat there and took it all in. I then asked her why she abandoned me. She then asked, "Do you really want to know the whole story? It is not nice and you will not like it. I am ready to be the bad guy in your head forever and keep my distance." I just kept pressing her. And then she told me the real story. She told me that my father and she met shortly before ending uni. At that time, my mother had said she did not want to stay in Unitown. A few months after dating, my father told her that his landlord was evicting him because the apartment was needed for immediate family use. She offered him to stay while he found something else. Months passed and he was not doing anything. Then she got a job offer in another country. She told my father that he could take over her apartment or come with her. They had this huge fight where my mother told him that she was not ready for the type of commitment he wanted. She wanted different things in life than him, and that as much as she loved him. That they weren't compatible. They stayed living together, and then one day she found out she was pregnant. She told me honestly that she was thinking of not having me. She did not feel ready to be a mom at 22. She did not feel maternal feelings. She said she was already struggling with depression and late-diagnosed ADHD. My father convinced her to have me. He said he would take me because he had a right to me. That he would go after her because that baby was also his. So she had me. She said that the time after birth was really bad. My father was dragging out the legal procedures. He refused to vacate the home. My mother said that while she felt love for me, and that there were moments when she felt overjoyed, it was overshadowed by huge waves of self-deletion ideation. She was scared that she was going to hurt me. She also showed me some of the court documents of that time that backed up her claims. In the end, she was so desperate that she agreed to stay with my father if he agreed to be the main caretaker. He did, but only half tried. My mother then told me that it got so bad that she tried to take her life around my second birthday, after a particularly nasty fight, where my father admitted to having tampered with her birth control. She showed me the papers of the involuntary 72 hours commitment and the legal documents where she was found unfit to be a parent afterward. I felt nauseous after all that. I would have not believed her, hadn't she brought so much evidence with her. She then asked me what I meant in my message that we were struggling. I told her that we were not exactly rich, and that I was struggling to come up with the money to go to university in another city. She was bewildered and asked me what my father had been doing with the monthly payments she was making. I told her that we don't receive that money. Then she took out another stack of papers. Started with how she met my dad when she was 20. She was graduating culinary school and had this job offer in Montreal. He was older and charming and established. She fell hard. She showed me this photo of them together. He looked so different, handsome and confident. She looked so young and happy. 6 months in, he told her his landlord was evicting him. Some family emergency and they needed the apartment back. She let him move in temporarily while he looked for a new place. But he never looked. And when she got the Montreal job and told him she was taking it, he lost it. Called her selfish for abandoning their relationship. I started to interrupt because yeah, that sounded selfish to me too. But she pulled out this lease agreement with only her name on it. Said she was 21 and had known him 6 months. She wasn't ready for forever and told him that clearly. Then she got pregnant. She showed me medical records. She'd been on birth control since she was 18, never missed a med, but somehow got pregnant anyway. I said accidents happen because they do. But her hand started shaking when she pulled out the next paper. It was a police report. Domestic disturbance. Her statement said that during a fight he admitted he'd replaced her birth control with placebos. Said he knew she'd leave unless he gave her a reason to stay. Said a baby would fix everything. I pushed the paper away. Said my dad would never do that. He wasn't that kind of person. But she kept pulling out more documents. Legal threats. Court filings. Dad demanding custody of a baby that wasn't even born yet. She said she wanted to terminate the pregnancy. She was 22 and depressed, and had just been diagnosed with ADHD. Her dreams were slipping away. But Dad threatened legal action. Said he'd drag her through court and ruin her reputation in the culinary industry. So she had me. She said she loved me the moment she held me, but love wasn't always enough. The depression got worse. Postpartum plus being trapped with a man who'd violated her in the most fundamental way. He'd stolen her choices. I asked why she didn't just leave and take me with her. She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Asked with what money since he'd isolated her from her job. Her family lived across the country, and he'd already filed for custody claiming abandonment because she'd gone to one job interview. She showed me more court documents, each one painting her as unstable and selfish and unfit. My hands were shaking by then. She said the breaking point came on my second birthday. He admitted everything and laughed about it. Said she should be grateful he'd given her purpose. That night she tried to kill herself. The hospital records were right there. Involuntary commitment. Psychiatric evaluation saying she had severe depression and postpartum psychosis. Said she expressed inability to care for child safely. They declared her unfit. Dad got full custody. But she negotiated one thing: financial support. She would pay substantial child support if he agreed to let her go. To not pursue criminal charges for abandonment. To let her disappear. Then she pulled out the bank statements. Wire transfers. Monthly payments of $2,800 starting when I was 2. I couldn't breathe. We were broke. We'd always been broke. Dad worked doubles. We could barely afford groceries. Where the fuck was $2,800 a month going? She said it quietly. 17 years. $2,800 a month for 17 years. Over $500,000. Where did it go? The room started spinning. I grabbed the table trying to do the math. That was college tuition, a car, better healthcare for Dad's back. All of it just gone. She said he told me she abandoned me. Let his mother reinforce the lie. Meanwhile, she'd been sending money every month thinking at least I was provided for. She stayed away because she thought it was better for me. A clean break with one stable parent instead of a tug of war with two. I said she could have fought, could have tried. But she asked, could she really? A woman with a psychiatric hold on her record who'd attempted sewer slide against a man with a stable job and his mother's support and a lawyer? She was 24 when she signed those papers. Broken and traumatized and terrified. I stared at the bank statements trying to understand. Asked where the money went. She said that's what she wanted to know too. She hired a private investigator last year to make sure I was okay without violating the agreement. He found concerning things. She pulled out property records. My dad owned 3 rental properties, all purchased in the last decade, all in his mother's name. I said that was impossible. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. Beverly lived with us because she couldn't afford her own place. Then it hit me. Oh my God. The investigator also found gambling debts. Significant ones that got paid off periodically. She said he'd been using me, using my pain and poverty to hide what he'd done. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. Said I couldn't do this. I needed to go. I needed to think. She pulled out a business card. Said it had her number and address, her lawyer's information. Said whatever I decided she'd be there. She'd always been there. I stumbled out of the restaurant feeling like I was going to pass out. I walked for hours after leaving that restaurant. Just wandered around downtown with Victoria's card burning a hole in my pocket. My phone kept buzzing but I couldn't look at it. Everything I thought I knew about my life was falling apart. I ended up at Tyler's apartment around 4. He took one look at my face and pulled me inside. I collapsed on his couch and just started sobbing. Like ugly crying where snot gets everywhere and you can't breathe properly. He held me while I cried and didn't ask questions. That's one thing I love about Tyler. He knows when to just shut up and be there. When I finally calmed down enough to talk, I told him everything. About finding Victoria on Instagram, the meeting, the documents, the money. All of it came pouring out in this jumbled mess. Tyler's face got darker and darker as I talked. When I got to the part about the $500,000, he actually stood up and started pacing. He kept running his hands through his hair and muttering curse words under his breath. He said we needed to confront my dad immediately. Said this was theft and fraud and probably a bunch of other illegal things. But I wasn't ready for that. I needed time to process everything. I stayed at Tyler's that night. Told my dad I was working a double shift and would crash at a coworker's place. He bought it because I'd done that before when I had back-to-back shifts. I couldn't sleep though. Just laid there staring at the ceiling thinking about every time we couldn't afford something. Every time Dad complained about money while buying lottery scratchers. Every time Beverly made comments about my mom being selfish while wearing new jewelry, I never questioned how she afforded. The next morning I called in sick to work. First time in 2 years. My manager was shocked but said I sounded terrible, so to take care of myself. Tyler made me breakfast but I couldn't eat. My stomach was in knots. I kept pulling out Victoria's card and staring at it. Part of me wanted to call her. Part of me wanted to pretend the whole thing never happened. Around noon, my dad started calling. I let it go to voicemail the first 3 times. The 4th time, Tyler grabbed my phone and answered it. He told my dad I was sick and resting. Dad demanded to talk to me, but Tyler said I was asleep. I could hear my dad getting angry through the phone. Tyler just kept saying I'd call him back later and hung up. Beverly started calling next. Then Dad again. Then Beverly. Back and forth like they were taking turns. I turned my phone off completely. Tyler had to go to class but said I could stay as long as I needed. He left me with soup and water and strict instructions to eat something. I managed a few bites. I turned my phone back on around 3. 27 missed calls between Dad and Beverly. A bunch of texts asking where I was and if I was okay, and demanding I call them immediately. Then I saw a text from an unknown number. It was Victoria. She said she was sorry if she'd overwhelmed me and understood if I needed space. Said the offer stood whenever I was ready. No pressure. I stared at that text for a long time. Then I did something stupid. I called my dad. He answered on the first ring. Started yelling immediately about how worried he was and how I couldn't just disappear like that. I let him rant for a minute, then cut him off. I said I knew about the money. Mom's money. Asked where it was. The silence was so long I thought the call dropped. Then he asked what I was talking about. What money? His voice was different. Careful. I told him not to play dumb. Said I had the bank statements and property deeds. All of it. Asked where my college fund was. Where the $500,000 went. He said I talked to her. Not a question. A statement. His voice went cold and flat. Called her a bitch. Said he knew she'd try to poison me against him. That's when I lost it. Started screaming that the only poison was him. He trapped her. Stole from me. Let me hate her while he was the monster all along. He started yelling back. Said he raised me. He was there. Changed my diapers and taught me to ride a bike and held me when I was sick. Asked where she was during all that. I screamed that she was sending money he stole. Living with trauma he caused. Asked how he could do this to me. He said everything he did was for us. For our family. Said the money was compensation for his pain and sacrifice. I hung up on him. Blocked his number. Blocked Beverly's when she immediately started calling. Turned my phone off again. Tyler came back from class to find me curled up in a ball on his bed. He laid down next to me and just held me while I cried again. I felt empty. Like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left just the shell. I stayed at Tyler's for 3 days. Called out sick to work again. My manager was getting annoyed but I didn't care. I couldn't go home. Couldn't face my dad or Beverly knowing what I knew. On the 3rd day I finally called Victoria. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. She answered on the 2nd ring. I told her I wanted to know everything. And I wanted my money back. She said she'd have her lawyer call me. We could meet tomorrow if I was ready. I said I was. The lawyer's office was in this fancy building downtown. All glass and marble and people in expensive suits. I felt like a kid playing dress up in my blazer from Goodwill. Victoria was already there when I arrived. She stood up when she saw me but didn't try to hug me or anything. Just gave me this small, sad smile. The lawyer was this woman named Patricia Smith. No relation to Victoria's husband apparently. She was all business. Had this massive file spread out on the conference table. She walked me through everything. The child support payments, the properties in Beverly's name, the gambling debts, the bank accounts. It was all there in black and white. Dad had been taking the money and gambling most of it away. When he won, he'd buy property in Beverly's name to hide it. When he lost, he'd just wait for the next payment. $2,800 a month was plenty to cover his habit and still have some left over. Patricia said what he did was fraud, theft, tax evasion, a bunch of other legal terms I didn't fully understand. Said we had a strong case if I wanted to pursue it. I asked what would happen if we did. She said he'd have to pay restitution, sell the properties, possibly face jail time depending on what the prosecutor decided. The thought of my dad in jail made me feel sick. Even after everything, he was still my dad. The man who taught me to tie my shoes and ride a bike, who stayed up with me when I had nightmares. Victoria must have seen something on my face because she told Patricia to give us a minute. After the lawyer left, Victoria turned to me. She said she knew this was hard, said I didn't have to decide anything right now, but also said I deserved that money. It was meant for me, for my education and future. I asked if she ever loved him. My dad? She got this faraway look and said she thought she did. But looking back, she thinks she loved the idea of him, the stability and safety he represented. She was young and confused, and he seemed so sure of everything. I asked if she ever loved me. The question just slipped out before I could stop it. Her eyes filled with tears. She said she loved me more than she'd ever loved anything. Said leaving me was the hardest thing she'd ever done, but she truly believed it was better for me. A clean break instead of a messy custody battle with a mother who'd tried to kill herself. She said she followed my life as much as she could without violating the agreement. Knew I worked at the grocery store. Knew I was dating Tyler. Knew I wanted to go to college. Said she was so proud of how I'd turned out despite everything. I started crying then. Not the angry tears from before, but something else. Grief maybe. For the relationship we never had. For the life that could have been. Patricia came back in and we continued going through options. I could pursue criminal charges or just civil. Could demand full restitution or negotiate a settlement. Could include Beverly in the lawsuit or leave her out. My head was spinning with all the choices. I said I needed time to think. Patricia said that was fine, but not to wait too long. There were statutes of limitations to consider. Victoria walked me out to my car. Well, Tyler's car that I'd borrowed. She asked if I wanted to get coffee sometime. Not to talk about legal stuff, but just to talk. Maybe start building something. I said I'd think about it. I wasn't ready for that yet. Maybe I'd never be ready. But I took her card again. The one I'd thrown away the first time. I drove back to Tyler's apartment on autopilot. He was making dinner when I got there. Actual food, not just ramen. Said I needed to eat real meals if I was going to deal with all this. While we ate, I told him about the lawyer meeting. He said I should go after my dad for everything. Make him pay back every cent plus interest. But it wasn't that simple for me. That night, I finally went home. I needed clothes and my work uniform. Plus, I couldn't hide at Tyler's forever. Dad was sitting in the living room when I walked in. He looked older somehow. Tired. He stood up when he saw me, but I held up my hand to stop him. I told him I knew everything. The gambling, the properties, all of it. Said I'd met with a lawyer and had options. His face went white. He started trying to explain. Said the gambling wasn't that bad. Said the properties were investments for our future. Said he'd always planned to give me the money eventually. I just stared at him. This man I'd idolized my whole life. Who I'd defended against anyone who said anything bad about him. Who I'd believed was this selfless single father who sacrificed everything for me. Beverly came out of the kitchen then, wringing her hands and looking between us. She started to say something, but I cut her off. I asked if she knew. About the money. About what he did to my mom. About all of it. She couldn't meet my eyes. Just stared at the floor and said family was complicated. Said she did what she thought was best for everyone. So she knew. My grandmother who helped raise me knew my father was stealing from me and said nothing. Did nothing. Just played along with the lie. I told them I was getting my stuff and leaving. Dad tried to follow me to my room, but I slammed the door in his face. Locked it and started shoving clothes into a bag. He kept knocking and saying we needed to talk. That I was overreacting. That family didn't sue family. That he'd make it right if I just gave him time. I ignored him and kept packing. Grabbed my important documents from my desk drawer. My birth certificate and social security card. The one photo of my mom I'd hidden all these years. When I came out, Dad was still in the hallway. He grabbed my arm as I tried to pass. Not hard, but firm. Said I couldn't just leave. This was my home. I yanked my arm away. Told him this hadn't been my home for a long time. Maybe it never was. A home built on lies wasn't a home at all. Beverly was crying in the living room. Kept saying she was sorry. That she never meant for things to go this far. That she thought the money was going to my college fund. I wanted to believe her, but couldn't. She lived in those properties Dad bought. Benefited from his gambling wins. There's no way she didn't know something was wrong. I left without looking back. Went straight to Tyler's and collapsed. I was officially homeless at 19. No family, no safety net, just a garbage bag full of clothes and a boyfriend with a couch. Tyler said I could stay as long as I needed. His roommate wasn't thrilled, but agreed to a few weeks while I figured things out. I'd need to find my own place eventually, though. I went back to work the next day. Couldn't afford to miss any more shifts. My manager gave me a warning about attendance, but I just nodded and got to work. Everything felt surreal. Here I was, bagging groceries and mopping floors while my whole life imploded. Customers complained about expired coupons while I tried not to think about $500,000 stolen from me. During my break, I called Patricia. Told her I wanted to move forward with the civil suit. Criminal charges I wasn't sure about yet, but I wanted my money back at minimum. She said she'd start the paperwork. Would need me to come in and sign some things. Asked if I'd thought about what kind of settlement I'd accept if they wanted to negotiate. I hadn't thought that far ahead. Just knew I couldn't let him get away with it anymore. Couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. After work, I met Victoria for coffee. It was awkward at first. We didn't know how to talk to each other. 17 years was a long time and we were basically strangers. She asked about school, what I wanted to study. I told her I'd always liked science but assumed I'd never afford a 4-year degree. Community college was the best I could hope for, and even that seemed out of reach. She said with the settlement I could go anywhere I wanted. Study anything. The world would be open to me in a way it never was before. It was hard to imagine. I'd spent so long with limited options that unlimited ones felt overwhelming, like asking someone who'd only ever eaten bread to suddenly order from a 5-star menu. She told me about her restaurant, how she'd built it from nothing after leaving, how cooking had saved her in a way, gave her purpose and control when everything else felt chaotic. I asked about her husband, Michael. She smiled when she talked about him, said he was patient and kind and understood her baggage. They'd been married 5 years, no kids. She said they'd tried but it hadn't happened. Part of her wondered if it was punishment for leaving me, karma or something. Her therapist said that was survivor's guilt talking, but she couldn't shake the feeling. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me was glad she hadn't had other kids. Selfish, but true. The thought of her raising some other child when she couldn't raise me would have hurt too much. We talked for 2 hours. about everything and nothing. She paid for my coffee, which felt weird, but I let her. Baby steps. When I got back to Tyler's, there was a voicemail from my dad. He sounded hammered, rambling about how I was destroying our family, how blood was thicker than water, how he'd done everything for me, and this was how I repaid him. I deleted it without listening to the whole thing, blocked his number again when he tried calling while I was listening. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings and work and trying to figure out my life. Patricia filed the lawsuit. Dad was officially served. The court date was set for 2 months out. He tried everything to contact me, showed up at my work until my manager threatened to call the cops, sent letters to Tyler's apartment, even got some relatives I barely knew to call and plead his case. Beverly was the worst. She'd stand outside the grocery store with tears in her eyes, not saying anything, just standing there looking pathetic. Customers started asking if she was okay, and my manager said she had to go. I almost broke a few times, almost called the whole thing off. The guilt was eating me alive. This was my family, the only family I'd ever known, and I was destroying it. Tyler kept me strong, reminded me they destroyed it first with their lies. I was just demanding truth and restitution, justice. Victoria checked in every few days, careful not to push but letting me know she was there. We had coffee a few more times, slowly building something that might eventually resemble a relationship. She introduced me to Michael once. He was exactly like his pictures, handsome and successful but also genuinely nice. He shook my hand and said he was glad to finally meet me, that Victoria talked about me all the time. That was weird to hear, that she'd been talking about me to her husband for years. This ghost daughter she couldn't see but couldn't forget either. The court date got closer. Patricia said we had a rock-solid case. The evidence was overwhelming, but Dad hired a lawyer too. Some cheap guy who specialized in family law. They tried to negotiate a settlement, offered me $50,000 to drop the suit. Patricia laughed at that, said it was insulting considering how much was stolen. We countered with the full amount plus interest. They came back with $100,000. We said no again. Dad was getting desperate. The properties would have to be sold to pay me back. He'd lose everything he'd built with my money. Good. A week before court, he showed up at Tyler's apartment. I don't know how he found the address. Probably followed me from work. Tyler answered the door, told him to leave immediately. Dad pushed past him calling for me. I came out of the bedroom and faced him for the first time in over a month. He looked terrible, lost weight, hadn't shaved. His clothes were wrinkled like he'd slept in them. He started crying when he saw me, ugly sobs like a child. He begged me not to do this. Said he was sorry. Said he'd make it right if I just gave him time. Said he'd go to therapy or rehab or whatever I wanted. I asked him one question. Why? Why did he do it? Why steal from his own daughter? Why let me grow up poor when we had money? He said he had a problem. Gambling was a disease and he couldn't control it. Said he always meant to stop. Always meant to save the money for me. But one bet led to another and another. I asked about Mom. About the birth control. About trapping her. He denied it at first. Then admitted maybe he'd suggested she switch brands. Maybe he'd known that brand was less effective. But he hadn't meant for her to get pregnant. It just happened. The lies came so easily to him. Even then, even with everything out in the open, he couldn't tell the full truth. Couldn't admit what he'd done to her. To us. I told him to leave. Said I'd see him in court. He tried to grab me again, but Tyler stepped between us. Told him to go before he called the police. Dad left, but not before saying I'd regret this. That family was forever and I was throwing mine away. That I'd end up alone just like my mother. That stung more than I wanted to admit. The fear that I was becoming her. Choosing money and freedom over family. But then I remembered she didn't choose. She was driven away. And the family I'd be losing was built on lies anyway. Court day came too fast and not fast enough. I wore my good blazer again. Victoria offered to buy me something nicer, but I declined. This blazer had gotten me through job interviews and college tours I couldn't afford. It would get me through this too. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Just a regular room with wood paneling and uncomfortable benches. Dad was already there with his lawyer and Beverly. They sat on one side while Patricia and I sat on the other. Victoria came too. Sat in the back quietly, just being there in case I needed her. Tyler sat next to her, my weird makeshift support system. The judge was this older woman who looked bored, probably dealt with family drama all day every day. Patricia presented our case methodically. Bank statements, property deeds, proof of fraud and theft. Dad's lawyer tried to argue it was a family matter, that the money was used for household expenses, that I benefited from it even if indirectly. The judge didn't look impressed. Then came Dad's testimony. He painted himself as a struggling single father who made mistakes. Said the gambling started as a way to stretch the child support, to make it last. But it got out of control. He cried on the stand. Said he loved me more than anything. That everything he did was for me even if it didn't seem that way. Beverly cried too from her seat. My turn came next. Patricia asked me simple questions. When did I find out about the money? How had its absence affected my life? What opportunities had I missed? I talked about working since I was 15. About choosing between textbooks and food. About watching my dad complain about money while hiding $500,000. About the lies that shaped my entire life. Dad's lawyer cross-examined me. Tried to make me look ungrateful. Asked if my father hadn't provided food and shelter and love. If he hadn't been there for every milestone. I said yes. He had been there, but he'd been there with my money, living off my future while playing the martyr. That wasn't love. That was manipulation. The judge deliberated for 2 hours, came back with her decision. Full restitution plus interest. The properties would be sold. The gambling debts investigated. Dad would have to pay back everything. He looked broken when the verdict was read. Beverly sobbed loudly. I felt empty. Not happy or vindicated. Just empty. Outside the courthouse, Dad tried to approach me one more time. Said this wasn't over. That I destroyed our family for money. That I was just like my mother after all. I stopped walking. Turned to face him. Told him he was right. I was like my mother. Strong enough to walk away from someone who hurt me. Smart enough to choose my future over his lies. He had nothing to say to that. Just stood there as I walked away. Beverly called after me, but I didn't look back. Victoria was waiting by her car. Asked if I was okay. I said I didn't know. Maybe I wouldn't know for a while. She said that was normal. That healing took time. We went for lunch. Not at some fancy place, but at a little diner near the courthouse. Ate greasy burgers and talked about what came next. The settlement would take months to finalize, but Patricia was confident I'd get most, if not all of it. I could go to college. Real college. Study whatever I wanted. The thought was terrifying and exciting and overwhelming all at once. Victoria offered to help me apply places. Said she had connections if I wanted them. I said I'd think about it. I wanted to get in on my own merit, not because my estranged mother knew people. Tyler met us after lunch. We drove around looking at apartments. With the settlement coming, I could afford my own place. Something small, but mine. No more couch surfing. I found a studio near campus. Nothing fancy, but it had good light and working heat. The landlord said I could move in next month. First real home that would be just mine. That night, I sat in Tyler's living room looking at college websites. Schools I'd never dared dream about before. Places that had seemed as unreachable as the moon. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Beverly. She said she was sorry. That she'd loved me the best way she knew how. That she hoped someday I'd forgive her. I didn't respond. Maybe someday I would forgive her. But not today. Today, I was too busy planning a future that finally belonged to me. Victoria texted too. Just a simple goodnight and a heart emoji. We were building something slow and careful. Not a mother-daughter relationship exactly, but something new. Something honest. Tyler asked what I was thinking about. I said everything and nothing. The past and the future. The life I'd lost and the one I was about to build. He kissed my forehead and said I'd figure it out. That I was the strongest person he knew. I didn't feel strong, but maybe that would come with time too. I submitted my first college application at midnight. Stanford. Might as well dream big, right? The application fee that would have been impossible a month ago was nothing now. Well, not nothing. It was everything. It was 19 years of stolen birthdays and Christmases. 19 years of my mother's guilt money. 19 years of lies. But it was also possibility. Hope. A future that was finally mine to shape. I hit submit and closed my laptop. Tomorrow I'd apply to more schools. Tonight I just wanted to sit with the feeling of finally being free. My phone buzzed again. Dad this time. I'd forgotten to block his new number. The message was short. Just 3 words. I love you. I stared at it for a long time, then deleted it. Maybe he did love me in his broken way, but love without honesty wasn't enough. Not anymore. I turned off my phone and curled up next to Tyler. Tomorrow would bring more drama probably. More guilt and anger and complicated feelings. But tonight I was just a 19-year-old girl who'd finally found the truth. And for the first time in my life that felt like enough. The next few months were weird as hell. I got into Stanford. Actually got in. Me, the grocery store girl who couldn't afford community college. They gave me a partial scholarship too based on merit. The rest would come from the settlement money once everything finalized. Patricia kept me updated on the legal stuff. Dad had to sell all 3 properties. Turned out they were worth more than we thought. The market had gone up since he bought them. Beverly had to move out of the one she'd been living in rent-free. I felt bad about that for like 5 seconds. Then I remembered she'd known about my money the whole time and got over it. Tyler helped me apartment hunt near Stanford. Everything was stupid expensive, but I could actually afford it now. We found this tiny place above a coffee shop. The smell of coffee would wake me up every morning, but I didn't mind. Victoria offered to help me move, but I wasn't ready for that. We were having coffee every couple weeks and texting sometimes. Baby steps. But having her help me start my new life felt like too much too fast. The settlement finalized in May. $487,000 after legal fees. I stared at my bank balance for like an hour. All those zeros didn't seem real. First thing I did was pay Tyler back for all the food and gas money. He tried to refuse, but I insisted. Then I bought a car. Nothing fancy. Just a reliable Honda that wouldn't break down on the highway. I quit the grocery store in June. My manager actually hugged me and said she was proud of me. Weird coming from someone who'd yelled at me about expired yogurt for 2 years, but whatever. Dad tried calling again right before I moved. Left this long rambling voicemail about how he was in therapy now. How he'd joined Gamblers Anonymous. How he wanted to make amends. I didn't call back. Maybe someday I'd be ready to hear his amends. But not yet. The wounds were too fresh. Moving day came in August. Tyler drove the U-Haul while I followed in my Honda. All my stuff fit in the smallest truck they had. 19 years of life in a 10-foot box. My new apartment was tiny but perfect. Wood floors and big windows and a kitchen that was just for me. I bought a bed from IKEA and assembled it wrong twice before getting it right. Tyler stayed for a week to help me get settled. We explored campus and found the best cheap food spots. He had to go back for his own senior year but promised to visit every month. The night before he left, I cried. Not sad tears, but scared ones. I'd never been alone before. Always had Dad or Beverly or Tyler. Now it was just me in a new city where I knew nobody. He said I'd be fine. That I was brave and smart and deserved this chance. That he'd only be a phone call away. We made it work long distance. It sucked, but we made it work. First day of classes was terrifying. Everyone seemed so confident and prepared. They talked about their gap years in Europe and their internships at tech companies. I'd spent my gap years bagging groceries, but I belonged there as much as they did. My grades proved it. My acceptance letter proved it. The money in my bank account that I'd fought for proved it. I majored in biology with a minor in business. Figured I should learn how money worked since I'd seen firsthand what happened when people didn't manage it right. Victoria and I kept meeting for coffee when she was in town. She'd opened a second restaurant in San Francisco, so she was around more. We talked about school and her business and safe topics like that. One day in October, she asked if I wanted to meet her parents, my grandparents. I'd never even thought about them. She said they lived in Seattle and had always wondered about me. I said I'd think about it. My family tree was already complicated enough without adding more branches. Beverly sent a Christmas card to my apartment. No return address, but I recognized her handwriting. Inside was just a photo of her and Dad from when I was little. All 3 of us at the park. We looked happy. I kept the photo but didn't respond. Some bridges were too burned to rebuild. Spring semester was easier. I'd found my rhythm and made some friends. People who didn't know my whole complicated history. Who just knew me as Emma, the girl who was weirdly good at organic chemistry. Tyler visited for Valentine's Day. We did touristy stuff and pretended the city was new to both of us. He'd gotten into grad school at Berkeley, so we'd be closer next year. The distance thing would finally end. In March, Dad sent a letter through Patricia. Said he'd completed his 12 steps and part of it was making amends. Said he didn't expect forgiveness but wanted me to know he was sorry. The letter was 10 pages long. Detailed every lie and manipulation. Every dollar stolen. Every opportunity I'd missed because of his addiction. It was brutal to read. At the bottom, he'd written that he'd started a fund for gambling addiction research. Small monthly donations from his warehouse salary. Said it was the only way he could think to make something good come from all the bad. I didn't write back, but I didn't throw the letter away either. Progress, maybe. Victoria invited me to Easter dinner at her place. Said it would just be her and Michael and her parents if I wanted to come. No pressure. I went. Figured I'd already blown up one family, might as well see if I had another one worth salvaging. Her parents were nice. Normal. They hugged me carefully like I might break. Said I looked just like Victoria at that age. We ate ham and made small talk and it was awkward but not terrible. Her mom pulled me aside after dinner. said she was sorry for everything, that they'd wanted to reach out over the years but Victoria made them promise not to, that they'd respected her wishes but it culled them. I said I understood, kind of. The whole situation was fucked up for everyone involved. At least now we had a chance to start over. Finals week nearly culled me, but I survived. Ended with a 3.8 GPA, which felt impossible. The girl who thought community college was out of reach was pulling A's at Stanford. I decided to stay in the city for summer. Got an internship at a biotech startup. Paid position because I could afford to be picky now. No more working for free or minimum wage. Tyler moved to Berkeley in July. We got him a place halfway between our schools. Spent weekends together again like normal people. It was nice. Victoria and I started having dinner once a month. Actual dinner, not just coffee. She taught me to cook basic stuff so I wasn't living on ramen anymore. We talked about deeper things. Her depression, my anger, the years we'd lost. She asked if I'd ever forgive her for leaving. I said I didn't know. Maybe forgiveness wasn't the point. Maybe just moving forward was enough. In August, Beverly died. Heart attack in her sleep. Dad called to tell me. First time I'd heard his voice in almost a year. He sounded broken. More broken than after the trial. I went to the funeral. Couldn't not go. She'd raised me even if she'd lied the whole time. Tyler came with me for support. The church was half empty. Beverly didn't have many friends left. Dad sat in the front row looking like a ghost. He'd lost weight. Aged 10 years in one. I sat in the back. Didn't go to the burial. Dad tried to catch my eye, but I stared straight ahead. I was there for Beverly, not him. Found out later she'd left me her jewelry and her will. Nothing valuable but sentimental stuff. Her wedding ring, a locket with my baby picture, things she'd worn every day. I kept them in a box under my bed. Couldn't wear them yet, but couldn't throw them away either. Sophomore year started better than freshman. I knew what to expect now. Had friends and study groups and a life that felt real. Not just surviving anymore, but actually living. Dad sent another letter at Thanksgiving. Said he was still sober. Still in therapy. Still sorry. Said Beverly's death made him realize how much time he'd wasted. How much he'd lost. This time I wrote back. Just one line. I'm glad you're getting help. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. That was all I had to give. Victoria's restaurant won some big award in December. She invited me to the ceremony. Introduced me to people as her daughter. First time she'd done that publicly. It felt weird, but not bad. Like trying on a coat that almost fit. Maybe with time it would feel natural. Christmas was strange without Beverly. I'd been mad at her, but she'd still been my grandmother. The only one I'd known. Her absence left a hole, even if our relationship had been built on lies. I spent the day with Tyler's family. They'd adopted me as honorary daughter at this point. His mom made too much food and his dad told bad jokes and it felt like what family should be. Victoria texted asking if I wanted to come for dessert. I said maybe next year. We were building something, but I wasn't ready for holidays yet. She said she understood. Spring semester flew by. I declared my major officially and started planning for junior year. Maybe study abroad if I could swing it. See the world I'd never thought I'd have access to. Dad completed his program in March. Sent me his one-year chip through Patricia. I put it in the box with Beverly's jewelry. Pieces of a broken past I couldn't quite let go of. Tyler got into a PhD program at Stanford. We could finally be at the same school. No more weekend commutes and missing each other. Just normal college couple stuff. I got a research position for the summer. Real science with real applications. My professor said I had potential for grad school if I wanted. The girl who'd barely dreamed of community college now thinking about a doctorate. Victoria and Michael invited me on vacation with them in July. Just a long weekend in Napa? I said yes. Figured it was time to stop keeping her at arm's length. We toured wineries and ate too much food and it was actually fun. Michael was easy to be around. Didn't try too hard to bond with me. Just treated me like family. One night after they'd gone to bed, I sat on the deck thinking about everything. 2 years ago, I'd been broke and angry and trapped. Now I had choices and money and something like family. It wasn't the life I'd planned. Wasn't the family I'd grown up with. But maybe that was okay. Maybe the life you build is better than the one you're born into. Senior year started with me feeling settled for the first time ever. My apartment felt like home. My classes felt manageable. My relationship with Victoria felt, not normal, but sustainable. I even answered one of Dad's calls in October. We talked for 5 minutes about nothing. Weather and sports and safe topics. He sounded good, healthy. I told him I was glad and meant it. He asked if I'd ever forgive him. I said I didn't know. Maybe someday. Maybe never. But I was building a good life and that was what mattered. He said he was proud of me. That despite everything I'd become amazing. I said thanks and hung up before it got too heavy. The settlement money had grown with some basic investments Patricia recommended. I'd have enough for grad school if I wanted. Or to travel. Or start a business. Options I'd never imagined having. Tyler proposed at Thanksgiving. Nothing fancy, just the two of us in my apartment. Said he'd loved me since we were 17 and wanted to love me forever. I said yes, obviously. Victoria cried when I told her. Happy tears. Said she wanted to help with the wedding if I'd let her. I said we were thinking small. Just close friends and chosen family. She said that sounded perfect. That chosen family was the best kind anyway. I graduated in June with honors. Walked across that stage in my cap and gown knowing I'd earned every bit of it. The money had opened doors, but I'd walked through them myself. Dad sent a card. Just congratulations and his name. I kept it with the other pieces of our broken relationship. Evidence that we'd both survived even if we'd never be whole. Victoria and Michael came to graduation. Her parents too. Tyler's family. My weird patched-together support system cheering as I got my diploma. Afterwards, we all went to dinner at Victoria's restaurant. She'd closed it for a private party. Just our little group celebrating in a space she'd built from nothing. I looked around the table at these people who'd become my family. Not the one I'd been born into, but the one I'd chosen. The one I'd fought for. Tyler squeezed my hand under the table. Next year, we'd start grad school together. Plan a small wedding. Build a life on our own terms. Victoria raised a toast to new beginnings and second chances. To choosing your own path even when it's hard. To family in all its complicated forms. I raised my glass with everyone else. Thought about the girl I'd been 2 years ago. Angry and broke and hopeless. She'd never have believed this was possible. But it was. All of it. The good and bad and complicated. The family I'd lost and the one I'd found. The future I'd stolen back from the past. That night, I went home to my little apartment above the coffee shop, sat at my desk and opened my laptop. Started writing my personal statement for graduate school applications. 2 years ago, I discovered my entire life was built on lies. I typed. It was the worst and best thing that ever happened to me. I wrote about truth and choice and building something from nothing. About families of blood and families of choice. About the weight of secrets and the freedom of honesty. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria, just checking that I made it home safe. I smiled and texted back that I was good. Better than good. For the first time in my life, I actually was.